The hospital security guard told her she had exactly 1 hour before they called the authorities. 1 hour to figure out how to keep 3 newborn babies alive with no money, no family, and a body too weak to produce milk. Mela sat in the scorching African sun, staring at the basket beside her 3 tiny bodies that had been inside her just 48 hours ago. 3 sons she had named Samuel, Eli, and Jonah, while lying in a delivery room where she almost died bringing them into this world. And then she saw him. A man in an expensive suit, standing 20 feet away, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. He approached slowly, stopped just outside her reach, and said 5 words that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "I can save them. For a price." What happened next would divide a nation, destroy her reputation, and force both of them to question everything they thought they knew about love, sacrifice, and what it truly means to be a parent. This is a true story. And before I tell you what choice Mela made in that courtyard, you need to understand exactly how she got there. Because it's worse than you think. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. 6 months before that courtyard, Mela was pregnant and alone. Her husband had walked out the day the ultrasound revealed triplets. Not twins. Triplets. 3 babies that would need 3 times the food, 3 times the diapers, 3 times the medical care. He looked at that screen, went silent, and by that evening his phone was disconnected. Mela lived in a room, and I need you to understand, I'm not talking about a small apartment. I'm talking about a single room. 10 feet by 12 feet. 1 mattress on a concrete floor. A charcoal stove she couldn't afford to light most days. A bucket she used for washing because there was no running water. The pregnancy nearly killed her twice. Once when she collapsed selling fruit at a roadside stand in 95-degree heat. The second time when her blood pressure spiked so high the clinic nurse told her flat out, "If you don't get proper prenatal care, you won't survive this delivery." Proper prenatal care cost money Mela didn't have. So she did what millions of women in poverty do. She worked through the pain. She hauled water. She scrubbed floors. She ignored the swelling in her legs that got so bad she couldn't fit into her only pair of shoes. And then, at 34 weeks, her water broke. She walked herself to the public hospital. Alone. No husband, no mother, no sister. Just her and 3 babies trying to force their way into a world that had no room for them. The labor lasted 19 hours. When the first baby came out, Mela sobbed with relief. When the second arrived, she laughed hysterically, the kind of laugh that sounds like breaking. When the third finally emerged, she had nothing left. No tears. No sound. Just exhaustion. They placed all 3 on her chest for exactly 90 seconds. Then the nurse said the words that started everything. "You'll need to pay for their NICU care. And for your bed. And for the medication. Do you have the money?" Mela looked at her. And whispered, "I have nothing." Here's what most people don't understand about public hospitals in low-income areas. They will help you. They will save your life. But they can only do it for so long. Mela was allowed to stay for 1 night. 1 night to recover from a traumatic delivery that tore her body apart. 1 night for 3 premature babies to stabilize in a hospital that had 6 incubators for 100 babies. By the second morning, the administrator made it clear. Either pay or leave. Mela begged. She got on her knees in a hallway and begged strangers for money. Some looked away. Some dropped coins, 20 cents, 50 cents. Amounts that wouldn't buy a single bottle of formula. By the 3rd day, the babies were crying constantly. Mela's milk hadn't come in properly because her body was starving. Malnutrition doesn't stop just because you give birth. Samuel, the firstborn, started turning pale. His breathing became shallow. Eli's cries grew weaker. Jonah barely made sound at all. And that's when the hospital made its final decision. "You need to leave. Now." Mela wrapped her babies in borrowed cloths, placed them in a basket another patient had given her, and walked out into the courtyard with nowhere to go. No family to call. No shelter that would take a woman with 3 infants. No job she could return to, Because who hires someone who just gave birth and needs to breastfeed every 2 hours? She sat under a tree, rocking that basket, whispering lullabies through tears. And that's when Adewale appeared. Adewale wasn't a predator. That's important. He was a self-made billionaire who'd grown up in poverty himself. His mother had died when he was 14, collapsed in a market from exhaustion and malnutrition. No one helped her. No one even called for medical assistance until it was too late. Adewale had spent 30 years building an empire, convincing himself that wealth could insulate him from that kind of helplessness. But he'd never been able to have children. And when he saw Mela in that courtyard, 3 dying babies, a mother with no options, something inside him cracked. He approached carefully. "Are they yours?" he asked. "Yes," Mela said, pulling the basket closer. He looked at the babies for a long time. "They're not going to survive like this." "I know," Mela whispered. Silence. Then Adewale reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. Heavy. "There's $10,000 here," he said. "Enough to clear your debts. Enough to start over." Mela stared at him. "And in exchange," he continued, "I take the babies. I raise them. They'll never know hunger. They'll have doctors, education, everything." Mela's hands started shaking. "You want me to sell my children?" "I want you to save them," Adewale corrected. "You're not giving them away. You're giving them a chance to live." Mela looked down at her sons. Samuel's chest was rising unevenly. Eli's lips were turning blue. Jonah had stopped crying altogether. And in that moment, Mela faced the cruelest truth a parent can face. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes love means letting go. Mela didn't remember making the decision. One moment she was holding the basket. The next, Adewale was walking away with it, and she was collapsing onto the concrete, screaming a sound so raw it didn't sound human. The money sat beside her, untouched. Eventually someone helped her stand. Someone guided her to a taxi. Someone must have, because she doesn't remember how she got back to her room that night. What she does remember is waking up at 2 a.m., breasts swollen and leaking, reaching for babies that weren't there. The physical pain was unbearable. Her body didn't understand that the babies were gone. Her milk came in fully, gallons of it, with nowhere to go. She wrapped her chest in tight cloths, biting down on her knuckles to keep from screaming as the pressure built. But the emotional pain was worse. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adewale lifting that basket. Every time she heard a baby cry in the distance, her arms moved instinctively, reaching for children who would never be there again. The neighborhood found out fast. "She sold them," people whispered. "What kind of mother does that? She got money and just gave them away." Women she'd known for years crossed the street to avoid her. Mothers pulled their children away as if poverty or shame were contagious. One woman spit at her feet and said, "You don't deserve to call yourself a mother." Mela didn't defend herself. What could she say? That her babies had been dying. That she'd had no choice. People don't want complicated answers. They want villains. And Mela had become theirs. Meanwhile, Adewale rushed the babies to a private clinic. The doctors worked for hours. Samuel was put on oxygen immediately. Eli needed 4 fluids. Jonah's body temperature had dropped dangerously low. They wrapped him in heated blankets and monitored him every 15 minutes. "You got them here just in time," one doctor said. "Another hour, maybe 2. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Adewale stood in the observation room, watching through glass as machines beeped and nurses moved with quiet efficiency. He should have felt relief. He should have felt pride. Instead he felt doubt. He kept seeing Mela's face. The way her hands shook when she handed over the basket. The way she collapsed the moment he turned away. That wasn't a woman who wanted money. That was a woman who had been cornered by reality. Adewale returned to his mansion that night. 10 bedrooms, marble floors, silence. He'd prepared a nursery weeks ago. 3 cribs. Soft lighting. everything perfect. But when he stood in that doorway, listening to the sound of 3 babies breathing through monitors, he felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. Not fear of responsibility. Fear of what he'd done. Did I save them? He whispered to the empty room. Or did I take them? He didn't have an answer. Adewale told no one the truth. Not his staff. Not his business partners. Certainly not the media. The official story was simple. He'd adopted 3 orphans through private channels. People asked few questions. Wealthy men did eccentric things all the time. But secrets don't stay buried forever. 6 weeks after the adoption, a journalist started asking questions. How had a single man adopted 3 babies so quickly? Why were there no records? Who was the biological mother? Adewale's lawyers shut it down fast, threatening lawsuits, buying silence. But the rumors persisted. Those babies came from somewhere, people muttered. Meanwhile, Mela tried to survive. She used some of Adewale's money to pay off her hospital debt. The rest she saved, terrified to spend it, terrified to touch it. Every bill felt like blood money. She found work cleaning offices at night, jobs where no one asked questions, where she could disappear into the work and avoid conversation. But avoidance wasn't healing. One evening, while scrubbing floors, Mela overheard 2 women talking. Did you hear about that billionaire on the hill? The one with 3 babies. Yeah. Apparently he has no wife. Just 3 infant boys. All at once. People are talking. Mela's hands froze. Her mop clattered to the floor. 3 boys. Her heart hammered so hard she thought she might pass out. Couldn't be. Could it? But deep down she knew. Somewhere in this city, her sons were alive. And she had no idea if she'd ever see them again. The encounter happened by accident. Mela was walking home from work when she passed an upscale shopping center, somewhere she'd normally avoid. But that day, exhaustion made her careless. She cut through the plaza to save time. And that's when she heard it. Baby crying. Not just any cry. Specific pitch. A rhythm she recognized in her bones. Mela froze. She turned slowly, heart pounding, and saw a woman struggling with a stroller. Inside, a baby screamed, face red with frustration. Mela's feet moved before her brain caught up. "Can I help?" she heard herself say. The nanny looked up, flustered. "I don't know what's wrong." Mela leaned down and spoke softly to the baby. "Hey, it's okay. Mama's here." The baby stopped crying. Instantly. Dark eyes locked onto Mela's face. The tiny body relaxed. The nanny stared. "How did you?" Mela stepped back, hands shaking. "Babies respond to calm voices," she stammered. "That's all." But it wasn't all. She knew that baby. Across the plaza, hidden behind a tinted car window, Adewale watched the entire exchange. And he knew the truth. The bond hadn't been broken. It had just been buried. And now, it was clawing its way back to the surface. Adewale spent 3 sleepless nights thinking. He could ignore what he'd seen, pretend it was coincidence. Or he could face the truth. Mela hadn't abandoned her children. She'd sacrificed herself to save them. And now those children were thriving, gaining weight, hitting milestones, surrounded by every advantage money could buy. But something was missing. Jonah cried at night in a way that didn't make sense. Not hungry, not sick, just searching. When the nanny played recordings of women's voices, he calmed. Eli turned sharply whenever he heard a soft female voice, scanning the room as if looking for someone specific. Samuel grew increasingly clingy, only settling when held a certain way, cradled close to the chest where he could hear a heartbeat. The pediatric nurse said it plainly. Babies remember their mothers. Not consciously. But their bodies remember. Adewale made a decision. He would test the bond. Not to hurt Mela. Not to prove her unworthy. But to know the truth. If the babies didn't respond to her, he'd leave things as they were. But if they did, then everything would have to change. Adewale arranged for the babies to have a checkup at a clinic near Mela's neighborhood. He knew she was sick. His private investigator had reported that she'd been coughing for weeks, too poor to afford proper treatment. He also knew which clinic she'd likely visit. It was a gamble, but 2 days later it paid off. Mela sat in the waiting room, hands folded, eyes down. When the door opened and a nanny walked in with 3 babies, Mela's world stopped. Every cell in her body recognized them. Samuel, Eli, Una, her sons. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. She stood slowly, legs shaking, and took 1 step forward. Then another. Jonah was crying, sharp, inconsolable cries. Without thinking, Mela reached out and rested her hand gently on his chest. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's okay, my love." Jonah stopped crying immediately. Eli turned his head sharply, eyes locking onto her face. Samuel began crying louder, not in distress but in demand, reaching his tiny fists toward her. The nanny stared in shock. And from the doorway, Adewale watched. There was no more doubt. These babies knew their mother. Adewale stepped forward. "Mela," he said quietly. She spun around, face pale, eyes wide with terror. "You," she whispered. "Those babies." "Come with me," Adewale said. "Let's talk." They moved to a private office. The babies stayed with the nurse nearby, visible through glass. Mela collapsed into a chair, shaking violently. "You planned this," she said, voice breaking. "You brought them here to know the truth," Adewale interrupted. "And now I do." "What truth?" Mela cried. "That I'm a terrible mother. That I gave them away. That you never stopped being their mother," Adewale said quietly. Silence crashed between them. "I was wrong," Adewale continued. "I thought I could separate survival from love. I thought providing safety was enough." He met her eyes. "But I underestimated the bond. And I underestimated you." Mela sobbed, her whole body folding inward. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you bring them here? Why did you let me see them?" "Because I owe you the truth," Adewale said. "And a chance to make this right." "There is no right," Mela said bitterly. "There's only what happened." Adewale leaned forward. "Then let's start there," he said. "And figure out what happens next. Together." Adewale didn't sugarcoat it. "This won't be easy," he said. "There will be legal processes, social workers, questions." Mela nodded, wiping her face. "But I'm proposing shared guardianship," Adewale continued. "The babies stay in my home for now. They need medical stability. But you'll have regular visits. Supervised at first, then gradually increased. You'd trust me with them," Mela whispered. "I already do," Adewale said. "You've shown me who you are. You survived the worst circumstances without bitterness. Without asking for more than you needed." He paused. "Most people in your position would have demanded everything. You demanded nothing. That tells me everything I need to know." Mela looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. "Respect." "What do you want from me?" she asked. "The truth," Adewale said. "And a chance to do this right. For them." Mela closed her eyes, tears streaming. Then she nodded. The first visit happened 2 days later. Mela arrived at a family center, hands shaking, wearing a borrowed dress. When the nanny brought in the triplets, Mela's breath left her body. She knelt down slowly. "Hello," she whispered. "It's me." Samuel reached for her first. Then Eli. Then Jonah began crying, not in pain but in recognition. Mela gathered all 3 as best she could, rocking them gently, humming a tune she didn't realize she remembered. They melted into her. Across the room, Adewale watched in silence. The visits continued. Twice a week, then 3 times. Mela never missed one. She asked questions. What foods did they like? What scared them? How did they sleep? She adjusted to their needs without complaint. And slowly, something began to shift. The babies thrived. They recognized both Mela and Adewale. They responded to both voices, both forms of care. They were building something new. Not a replacement for what was lost, but a foundation for what could be. 6 months into the arrangement, Jonah fell ill. Started with a fever. By midnight he was crying weakly, body burning hot. Mela called Adewale, voice cracking with panic. He arrived within minutes. They rushed Jonah to the clinic together. The infection was minor, treatable, temporary. But Mela collapsed in the waiting room, shaking uncontrollably. "I can't lose them again," she whispered. "I can't." Adewale knelt in front of her. "You're not alone this time," he said. "Not anymore." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw something she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. He wasn't her enemy. He was her partner. Weeks later, the social worker delivered her final report. The children are thriving. Bonding is strong with both caregivers. Oversight can be reduced. No applause. No celebration. Just quiet acknowledgement. Mela moved into a small house near the family center. Modest, clean, hers. The triplets stayed with her 3 nights a week. Then 4. Adewale visited regularly, helping with feedings, playing with the babies, learning to co-parent without controlling. They weren't a traditional family, but they were a real one, built on truth, respect, and the hardest kind of love, the kind that required letting go of ego and pride. Adewale didn't sugarcoat it. "This won't be easy," he said. "There will be legal processes, social workers, questions." Mela nodded, wiping her face. "But I'm proposing shared guardianship," Adewale continued. "The babies stay in my home for now. They need medical stability. But you'll have regular visits. Supervised at first, then gradually increased. You'd trust me with them," Mela whispered. "I already do," Adewale said. "You've shown me who you are. You survived the worst circumstances without bitterness. Without asking for more than you needed." He paused. "Most people in your position would have demanded everything. You demanded nothing. That tells me everything I need to know." Mela looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. "Respect." "What do you want from me?" she asked. "The truth," Adewale said. "And a chance to do this right. For them." Mela closed her eyes, tears streaming. Then she nodded. The first visit happened 2 days later. Mela arrived at a family center, hands shaking, wearing a borrowed dress. When the nanny brought in the triplets, Mela's breath left her body. She knelt down slowly. "Hello," she whispered. "It's me." Samuel reached for her first. Then Eli. Then Jonah began crying, not in pain but in recognition. Mela gathered all 3 as best she could, rocking them gently, humming a tune she didn't realize she remembered. They melted into her. Across the room, Adewale watched in silence. The visits continued. Twice a week, then 3 times. Mela never missed one. She asked questions. What foods did they like? What scared them? How did they sleep? She adjusted to their needs without complaint. And slowly, something began to shift. The babies thrived. They recognized both Mela and Adewale. They responded to both voices, both forms of care. They were building something new. Not a replacement for what was lost, but a foundation for what could be. 6 months into the arrangement, Jonah fell ill. Started with a fever. By midnight he was crying weakly, body burning hot. Mela called Adewale, voice cracking with panic. He arrived within minutes. They rushed Jonah to the clinic together. The infection was minor, treatable, temporary. But Mela collapsed in the waiting room, shaking uncontrollably. "I can't lose them again," she whispered. "I can't." Adewale knelt in front of her. "You're not alone this time," he said. "Not anymore." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw something she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. He wasn't her enemy. He was her partner. Weeks later, the social worker delivered her final report. The children are thriving. Bonding is strong with both caregivers. Oversight can be reduced. No applause. No celebration. Just quiet acknowledgement. Mela moved into a small house near the family center. Modest, clean, hers. The triplets stayed with her 3 nights a week. Then 4. Adewale visited regularly, helping with feedings, playing with the babies, learning to co-parent without controlling. They weren't a traditional family, but they were a real one, built on truth, respect, and the hardest kind of love, the kind that required letting go of ego and pride. One evening when the triplets were asleep, Mela and Adewale sat outside under fading light. "Do you ever regret it?" Adewale asked quietly. Mela thought carefully. "I regret the world that forced the choice," she said. "Not the people who tried to fix it." Adewale nodded. "I used to think love was a liability," he admitted. "Something that made you weak." "And now?" Mela asked. "Now I know that love is the only thing that makes you strong," he said. They sat in comfortable silence. Inside, Samuel stirred and cried softly. Mela stood to go to him, but Adewale raised a hand. "I'll go," he said. He lifted Samuel carefully, rocking him gently. "You're safe," he whispered. "All of you." And this time he believed it. Years will pass. The triplets will grow. They'll ask questions. Why don't we have one home like other kids? Why do we have 2 parents who aren't married? And when that day comes, Mela and Adewale will tell them the truth. Not as a story of shame, but as a story of survival. They'll explain that sometimes life doesn't offer fair choices, only necessary ones. They'll teach them that love isn't measured by perfection, but by sacrifice. That wealth means nothing without compassion. That poverty doesn't define worth. And most importantly, that they were never abandoned. They were chosen, again and again, by everyone who mattered. This story reminds us that true strength isn't about never breaking. It's about what you build after you've been shattered. Mela could have stayed bitter. Adewale could have stayed controlling. Instead, they chose something harder. Humility, growth, partnership. And in doing so, they gave 3 children something more valuable than money or status. Family built on truth. If this story moved you, drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. Was it Mela's choice in the courtyard? The reunion at the clinic? The moment Adewale admitted he was wrong? And if you believe in second chances, in redemption, in the power of honest love, hit that subscribe button. Because there are millions of stories like this happening right now. Stories of people facing impossible choices. Stories that deserve to be told. Stories that remind us we're all more complicated and more capable of change than we think. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.